Steering stabilisation is one of those things that, well, we don't really talk about in mountain biking because the bikes are so flipping good. But that said, this bike has a steering stabiliser on it, and recently Canyon released another bike, Mullet's Setup Spectral, that also had a steering stabiliser. And their World Cup racer, Troy Brosnan, has been seen experimenting with an externally mounted unit on his bike. So I thought it's about time I rode one of these and tried to figure out what it does and who it's for. Okay, so first up, you're probably wondering what KISS even means. So it's an acronym and it means keep it stable. Now this is a spring system that's incorporated into the bike, and it was designed by engineers at Syntace. Now they have this on various different offerings out there, and the Canyon designers and engineers actually saw this and rode it and thought, wow, this is a look at the future. So they decided to collaborate with them, and it even says on the frame here, Canyon X Syntace KISS. So on the inside of the frame is something that you would have seen on the outside of Troy Brosnan's race bike, as you can hopefully see on screen, and you might have seen in some of the race footage from the UCI races this year. His is an external unit because he's experimenting with it to see the benefits it can offer him in racing. But on this bike, it's completely concealed within the frame. You don't even know it's there, apart from the decal on the top tube here and the little slider. So essentially, you've got a cam in the sort of shape of a headset spacer, I'd say, mounted on the inside out of sight. And around that cam, you have a webbing strap that connects to two dual springs that then connect to the top tube and the slider that's used to adjust the tension in the system. Now, what it offers is a self-aligning torque. Again, that's adjustable. And Canyon say it has the ability to counter wheel flop. So if you've ridden a steep sort of climb, maybe even on a fire road like the one behind me, you might have discovered that your bike just weaves around a little bit at really low speed, so it's going to help you with that. It also is going to prevent the wheel deflecting, not completely, but to a large degree when you're riding through rough terrain. Think of sort of like a loose baby head rocks and stuff where your steering can feel a little bit skittish. It's going to help you maintain stability as if you're on a bigger travel bike, but with the same shorter travel bike that you're actually riding. And they also say it counters understeer. Now this actually, I think, is one of the key things that I'm interested to find out. Because the front and rear wheels are actually connected, they say is an element when you understeer that helps correct it, but also enables you to two-wheel steer because of the connection between those. Fabian Burrell actually in one of their launch videos said it was a little bit akin to skiing, the way that you would actually corner and move the bike around with the wheels as a single unit. That sounds great. This is with the most tension in the KISS system. So you turn the bars to the side, the lister wants to find the middle quite naturally. Now if I just adjust it, and I'll show you in the least tension, just to show you the difference. So it still wants to center, but there's no real resistance that I can feel here. It feels fairly natural. And of course, if you wanted to, you could fully back it off, even at the front here. So that is referring to where the strap goes around the cam. You could loosen that and it will have no effect at all. So we're going to experiment with different settings today, just to see what it actually does out on the trail. Over the years I've been mountain biking, everything on bikes has changed in order to make them handle better off-road. Handlebars have got wider, stems have got shorter, head angles have got slacker. And even cross-country bikes today are incredibly confidence-inspiring on the worst terrain, which really begs the question, why on earth do you need help with your steering on a mountain bike? Well, to understand this, let's look at the three major things that affect your steering: your head angle, the fork offset, and the trail measurement. Okay, I'll try and keep this snappy, so let's talk about the three things that really affect the steering on a bike. First up is the head angle. So you'll know about this on geometry charts because of the fact it's the thing that makes the bike slack or steep at the front. Head angle is literally a line or a steering axis that goes down through the head tube all the way down to the ground. The angle is calculated like so. This bike is 64 degrees, as you can see by the line on the screen, and it can be called a slack head angle. A slack head angle at low speed can feel very hard to steer. At high speed, it can feel very comfortable, calm, and all that sort of stuff. A steep head angle at low speed will feel very responsive, but the downside is at high speed or on steeper and rough terrain, it can feel nervous and twitchy. Now, the thing that directly works with these two styles of handling on a bike is the trail measurement. This is the one that is responsible for your bike being self-steering. It's the thing that makes all bikes able to handle with no hands on the handlebars. You must have ridden a bike with no hands and noticed that you can just move around. Self-steering ability comes from trail. The trail measurement is taken between that axis that meets the floor and the contact patch of the tyre. The bigger the trail number, and it's called trail because it's behind the steering axis, a trailing number. The bigger the number, the more stable it's going to be. The smaller number, the least stable. The final thing that affects these is the offset of the fork, basically. So you can have an offset crown on the fork. A smaller number or a smaller offset will generate a larger trail number, and vice versa. So those three things together, combined with the axle height, so the bigger wheel size will have naturally a bigger trail number, and a smaller wheel size will have a smaller number. So those three things together affect everything. But trail is immensely important on bikes because it gives you stability. Now, there is an obvious exception to this. So a positive trail number, so anything that is behind that steering axis there, is responsible for a bike's self-steering. But you get some bikes with very, very small trail numbers on. So some cargo bikes and touring bikes, for example, when you've got nothing on them, can feel immensely twitchy and nervous, but you load them up and they feel like a normal bike. That is essentially because they've designed them to be unstable until laden. So the trail is everything on a bike. It's what gives us the self-steering ability to ride no-handed. And it does make me wonder why you need further help with that, because this is designed to self-center even more so. Okay, so this is with the system on, well, it's backed off basically, so it's not actually doing anything. So it doesn't really feel like anything's going on at the moment. Doesn't feel any different from my normal bike with that. If I'm honest, can't feel any difference with it backed off. It feels exactly the same. I'm only really noticing it when I'm riding back up. So I'm gonna flip it straight to the firmest setting, or that way even, and then see how that feels. Whoa, okay, that feels loads different. Oh wow, oh my God, the difference is significant actually. So what I noticed then was there's all these tiny little holes, almost like braking bumps, but they're actually bigger holes coming into that turn. But it's more like carving a turn. It feels like you're less disturbed by the surface conditions. You definitely feel like the bike handles like a bigger travel bike, but you don't have the weight of the bike, the more travel, all the other sort of negatives, you could argue, that have that. I think we need to ride some more turns back to back to see how the bike wants to stand up, because I feel like that will be a significant thing. Maybe we'll go to turns on sheep skull, and I feel like I need to ride something almost straight line, choppy, to see how that handles. So I suspect that will be immensely stable. There's something there for sure. Again, it feels no different on this sort of stuff. But yeah, that is quite a flat turn there. Oh, actually, wow. Bit wide on that. Oh, definitely helps you out of the turns. A minute ago I was riding something a little choppier, and it definitely does calm things. I think that's the best description. But this is the top part of, what, sheep skull? I think that's right. And it's a load of successive turns. They're fairly flat with not much support. And although the turns aren't difficult, the change in direction to the next turn can be. And what this felt like, it felt like the bike, between the turns, you could stand it up easier. I'm going to turn it off completely for this run to just sort of confirm that, and then try it again with it on. But the gut instinct is, as you come out that turn, it does, like the self-centering really does sort of help you change direction. That's kind of, that's a bit unexpected actually from what I was expecting. So this should just be like riding my normal Spectral that I'm familiar with. Again, so no difference here. Oh, okay. Wow, it does feel twitchier. It really does. Not in a bad way, but there's definitely some differences. That's way harder. Oh my God, I went offline and expecting it to pull me back in. Okay, so that was completely wound off, just free steering. Straight line, doesn't feel any different as I'd imagine. Feels like a familiar bike, but literally the tiniest bit of chatter coming into the turns when you're setting up, even just then my wheels just moving around, you probably notice that I'm weaving quite a lot. It really does make a significant difference. I don't know yet if it's one that benefits me, but it can definitely calm your steering down, and it definitely helps you change direction, and it definitely does do something in the chop. It genuinely does calm things down. Okay, I've been riding it for a few hours now, and I've tried it medium, tried it loose, tried it fully on, and tried it completely undone, riding like a normal bike like it is at the moment. When you go back to that normal bike, your steering does feel immensely free compared to how it is when it's on fully stabilised. Now, it doesn't make a massive difference in a lot of places. You definitely do feel more connected with the front and rear wheel when it's fully on, but there are two scenarios where it is making a difference. Now, one of them are these slightly choppy rises where the bike just goes unweighted slightly. When it's off completely, I'm noticing the bike is skipping around a bit. It's not really a problem, I'm used to that. But when it's on fully, it doesn't. So you could argue that it's better in situations like that. I mean, I don't think it makes a difference to the way that I ride, but coming to stuff like this, you're used to the bike janking around and moving and doing stuff. It does calm that down. So if that is something that you struggle with, then something like that will work for you. Now, the other situation is these turns. So these are just bank turns, and I was just kind of skidding and sliding into them, really. But what I noticed is, as you start sliding, the front end understeers, and when it does, it wants to straighten up, kind of as they actually say it does. But more to the point is, as you start sliding, it wants to bring you out the slide and correct again. So it actually feels more natural to be drifting around, just because of the sort of synergy between the two wheels. Felt like it actually saved me there a bit. Okay, well, I should be summarising about here, but in truth, I'm still kind of with what's been going on today, because I've got very mixed feelings about what I've just experimented with. I'm definitely going to spend a lot more time on this bike with this system. I think it's fascinating, and it's definitely food for thought about where bikes could go in the future. So today, what have I learned then? So climbing, for example, bearing in mind that I've tried a mixture of the firmest setting, mid setting, the least setting, and turning it off. If you're running on the least setting, those steeper climbs where you can suffer wheel flop, especially if they're that steep or you're that tired or perhaps a bit underpowered, yes, that makes a big difference actually. There's a section that Josh was riding with me. Josh is the guy holding the camera, and he actually tried to ride the straight line I was and ended up having to weave around a bit more. So actually, it genuinely can help you to a degree. Then up towards the top, we started doing basically some turns, because I wanted to see how it was going to affect your change of direction. So when you ride this on the flat, just around the car park, it doesn't feel good. You can't ride it with your hands off the bars very easily, because when you're going no-handed, you're relying on the bike moving around to be able to keep a straight line. Whereas the fact that it wants to go in a straight line makes it difficult. But on those turns where you've got to change direction, there's a section, I think on Cheap Skull at the top we were doing some filming, left to right to left to right. The change of direction, it wants to snap you out of that turn and basically prepare you for the next lean. That is a significant thing to experiment with. I think that's a really beneficial thing. We ran that on the sort of the most setting. So what I would actually get from this is, if you're riding more aggressive terrain, you want more from it. If you're in less aggressive terrain, you'd want to run it on more of a minimum setting. And it is something to pick up on, that this setting here at Forest Dean, the terrain is fantastic, but there's not that much elevation here, and it's not that steep where you can really appreciate a bike like this. So as I say, I'm going to spend a bit more time on it. But some other places where it really came into play was that choppy terrain. Now, 100% it does make a difference. On the sort of choppy terrain, you end up sort of moving around loads on a bike. It just kind of, it doesn't iron anything out because it's not damping anything, but it genuinely does help you commit to a line in a slightly different way. It's not helping you, it just makes you ride that little bit different. And to an extent, I'd say that it makes the bike track the ground as if it's a bigger travel, longer and heavier bike, but without having the weight sort of penalty, the longer travel penalty. So this is a 150 sort of bike, and it makes it feel like the torque, you know, like a 180 bike. So I'd say there's a definite benefit for choppy terrain for this sort of style system. Now, something that I've not got to ride today that I think will be a massive benefit will be really loose terrain. Now, something that I've noticed just on a few turns here, or the where if you understeer and the front sort of just loses slightly, it basically the rear just wants to correct to it. I think with sliding and stuff, the fact that front and rear wheels are almost joined together, you've got an element of that two-wheel steering. I think that'll be a significant thing. So if you ride somewhere that's dry, loose, steep, fast, I think there's some definite benefits to be had from it. So I am going to need to spend a bit more time on it to really make my mind up. But yes, it's got some significant benefits in more different sort of scenarios than I expected, if I'm honest. Now, where this goes in the future, I don't know where it's going. I don't think you guys know where it's going either, but if this was on a bike, I think you would definitely use it. Would you buy a bike specifically to get this? Perhaps if you have that terrain, you know, if you live somewhere perhaps in Spain or America or somewhere that does have that super dry, dusty stuff that you get on alpine stuff, I think there's a definite benefit to it. Here in the UK, thankfully it's not that wet at the moment, but it's probably going to be wet by the weekend, which means I'd get to try it in the kind of wet, slimy, slidey conditions, which actually it might have a real strong benefit. So I think you're going to see a part 2 for this video, but it's been fascinating just trying something that's, if I'm honest, it feels more like a concept than something you can actually go and buy. I think it's really exciting and I can't wait to find out where they're going to go with this next. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Keep It Stable system from Stabilisation Canyon in the comments underneath there. Feel free to ask me some questions. I do plan on speaking to the engineers about this and just diving in a bit deeper, but today was really about just trying to figure it out, feel what's going on, and I think I've got a grip on it, but more trail time needed, I think. So on that note, see you later. I'm going this way.